With Set 6 releasing this week, I want to take some time to recap the best decks of the Omniscient Awakening format. And because I want this video to be relevant for the English side when the set does come out, I won't be including the strat decks or the collab decks in this video. I've been playing in this format ever since it was released a couple months ago, so I think I have a pretty good understanding of the meta. But these are still my personal opinions, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll also be showcasing a sample deck list for every deck I talk about today. And without further ado, let's get started. Let's start by talking about Varga. Yes, it got a new form and it's a lot better, but the deck as a whole, it kind of falls short. A lot of the strength of this deck comes with the drive checks, since you're relying on your multiple Vanguard swings threatening your opponent for lethal damage. But the problem with this deck is that other than Twin Impulsive, you're not doing selective deck thinning, where your card draw effects are not increasing their chances of checking triggers. It's much easier for the opponent to guard or take the second attack. This deck though is still a benchmark for every other deck that wants to compete in this format. The reason is because of the board wipe every turn. Your deck needs to be able to consistently rebuild, and you'll see later on that the other decks can instantly pop out of the field either from card effects or just from the sheer number of cards they draw. Nevertheless, with Rakshasa's Divine Skill now not needing our opponent to be at a certain damage, it's still a very powerful effect. The rest of the deck plays very similarly to before. You have your cards that generate more value like Boulder Axe and Rokusei, as well as Shura to get those cards back and to attack for even more times. And here's a simple deck list. The next deck I want to talk about is Blangdmire. The reason why this deck saw a rise in usage this set is because of its ability to keep up with the other top decks of the format, mainly for how easy it is to pop out the field using Veidrak Dragon, as well as just the big columns this unit generates. The new promo, Failure, is also incredibly important in this deck, as it's one of the prime targets for Veidrak Dragon to call in order to keep drawing cards. It's also very likely you get the effect off since we run multiple orders and Blangdmire takes care of 2 of the opponent's rear guards every turn. The other reason why this is one of the top decks is because of how good the deck is at filtering out non-trigger units from the deck. From just normally riding up in Zamuk, you put normal units into the soul that can be later utilized by Veidrak Dragon and Cage of Furious Star. Sagacious Schemer also serves the same purpose of thinning Game of Underworld out of the deck, but it's also great for allowing Veidrak Dragon to boost with very big numbers. Then it's about when you want to activate Blangdmire's Divine Skill. If you're able to catch the opponent without a Persona Ride or if they took too much damage in the early game, since you do have a pretty good turn 2, then it's pretty much game over. And here's a simple deck list. Let's look at the other Dark States deck, Liael Odium. Even though outside of her Divine Skill, this is a 3-attack deck, the number it generates from Distorted Bane and her own skill is extremely large. Yes, the deck is very reliant on finding the order and making sure you can use her Divine Skill on turn 4, but you have so many ways to find it, such as with Avarice Wrestler and your Cyclers, that more often than not, this shouldn't be a problem. Your best play on turn 2 is to put Anachronos Dragon as a regress gauge with the Ryland Grade 2 skill and then call it down at the start of the battle phase. You also want to make sure you have one available every turn, whether that be to put another Anachronos as a gauge with its skill, or to put one there with Liael Odium. The deck is so reliant on these 3 cards that the play pattern is honestly quite simple, but you do have to be careful about decking out, and that playing Distorted Bane doesn't mean you soul charge every time. You just want enough soul to be able to activate your effects. And here's a simple deck list. Next up on the list is Levidras. One of the reasons why this deck is so powerful in my opinion is how easy it is to build a board. You have Huli as well as Aspronia and Saphira that lets you call a unit back from the drop, which means it doesn't matter if your opponent wipes your board, you basically have your drop zone available for use anyways. And one of the prime call targets is Knight of Formosity, Charmant. Get a free 23 attacker every turn that converts to a card draw. Obviously the other reason why this deck is so good is because of the amount of Infinity Eyes marker the deck generates. It depends on how you want to play the deck, but just having the option of debuffing your opponent's rear guards by 10k and being able to draw a card is already a lot for the opponent to play around. Once you have the board set up, this deck is very hard to beat in the late game. And here's a simple deck list. And the best deck of the format in my opinion is Rezael. This deck is so consistent in what it tries to do. You start deck thinning with Saragon in the early game, collecting pieces such as regular Rezael and Cadwalla that allows you to have explosive turns later on. The reason why regular Rezael is better in the right line is because it gives you the option of using the Divine Skill on turn 3. You sometimes may just need to survive and use it to get more cards from the triple drive or heal with a crit. Or in other cases, you might use it to just push your opponent for more damage. Either way, having the option to do so is just nice. Being able to call an additional unit with Rezael Vita is a big deal, especially if the call target is Gabuelius in the later stages of the game. Having to guard both this attack as well as Vita when both have drive checks is so difficult because more often than not, there will be a couple of triggers since Gabuelius get to look at the top card of the deck. And you already condensed your deck from other effects as well as Rezael shuffling crits back in. The base power on Gabuelius is also quite large, getting 5k from Rezael, another 5k if you put the card on the top of the deck to the bottom, another 5k if you're at 4 damage, or 10k if you chose to counterblast. And here's a simple deck list. The key to success in this format is having a good turn 2. All the decks above can start applying pressure on turn 2 and still produce a threatening board the turn after. With the numbers getting so big with limited defensive options, it's really important that you guard early when possible or to force your opponent to commit more cards early on. Right now, there is just such a big advantage going first, from generating a board when the player going second is still on grade 1, to being the first one to Persona Red. And those are my thoughts of the meta of Set 5. Do you agree that these are the top decks? Do you think the English side will have a different interpretation of the format? Let me know down below in the comments. And also be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.